Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ed, and today I'll be talking about the most common mistakes people make when planting tomatoes in containers. I purposely made many mistakes and in this case, which I'll be discussing, to show you what exactly happens when you make those mistakes. So what you see here is four tomato plants in a small container. I'll come closer so you can have a better look. Okay, so four plants. There's two red robins, so that's a red robin. In the front, that's a red robin next to it. Behind, on the right, is a tumbling tom yellow. Behind on the left is a tumbling tom red. All three tomatoes are dwarf varieties. Actually, red robin is considered a micro dwarf. It grows up to 1 foot, and tumbling tom is a cascading variety, also determinate. They grow much bigger and are supposed to produce a lot more. So I decided to put four plants into a small container and see. That's the first mistake. So it is very important to pick an adequate size container when growing anything, especially tomatoes. This container is 6 inches deep, exactly 1 foot or 30 centimeters long, and 10 inches wide. And it would be enough to have for two micro dwarfs. Like, you can have comfortably two red robins or two wilmas, or like any other micro dwarfs, two like micro toms. They would do well, but it would not be enough for four micro dwarfs, and it definitely wouldn't be enough for two micro dwarfs and two dwarf plants, like in this case. So what happens when you make this mistake, when you overcrowd plants, or you pick a container that's just too small for one plant? Well, there's a few things that happens. First, there's not enough nutrients, so you have to, like, all the plants in there will be competing for nutrients, and they'll be competing for water. And water is a particularly important, because in summer, because that's when we grow tomatoes, when it's hot, the water evaporates very quickly in the heat. And if your tomatoes don't get enough water during the day, and what will happen is you will lose some flowers, so that you will get flower drop. So dropping flowers means less fruit. So you can see here, there's a good example right here. You have one tomato, and there is 5 of them or 6 of them missing. Those were all flowers that dropped because of lack of water or lack of nutrients, since this container is just too small for 4 plants. So what will happen is you'll have a lot less tomatoes, and the plants will get stunted, like they will not grow as big and as they normally would in the perfect conditions. And another thing is, when you pick a container, you have to pick the adequate size, and you have to pick the adequate color. See, this is black color. Black attracts sunlight, so it heats up even more in the direct sunlight, and which results in the water evaporating even faster, and that's the problem. You have the water will be even more scarce for these tomatoes. So that's the mistake number one. The second mistake I made is I bought the cheapest topsoil I could find. It was, I think, 70 cents per big bag at the grocery store, and I did not mix it with anything. I just used straight topsoil, and what I noticed is that this soil doesn't retain water properly. It doesn't retain moisture, and like basically the water would, as you pour it, like most of it would just go through and come out through the bottom of the container. And so that even makes the problem of watering even worse, because not only that the container is too small for the plants, but the soil doesn't even retain enough moisture. So I don't recommend you ever use pot soil as your growing medium for that reason. What I used to do in the past, and what I always do, I just this year, for this particular experiment, I did not use it because I wanted everyone to see what happens when you make such mistakes. What you normally would do is, if you don't want to spend money on expensive soils, you can, expensive, not soils, but soil mixes. You can make a mix yourself. So you can either get a topsoil, or if you have a garden, you just get your garden soil and mix it with peat moss or coco coir, because that would make your soil fluffy. It'll make it more porous, like, so that the soil would retain moisture better, but at the same time it will not, the water won't be pooling, because sometimes when you have bad soil the water would pool and it just wouldn't even go through the soil, and that would create breeding ground for all kinds of fungi, which would then result in your plants getting sick, getting diseases. So you need to mix your topsoil or garden soil with either coco coir or peat moss. I would say at least 30%. Should be at least 30% peat moss or coco coir, and then what you also want to do is you want to make your soil more nutritious. So, and add also some microbes to it. You achieve that by adding compost. So I would say 10 to 20%, better 20, should be compost. So that's how you make a good mix. You add compost, top or garden soil, you mix together, and peat moss or coco coir. So that's the mistake number 2. Your soil has to be adequate. Also, it has to have a proper drainage and proper moisture retention, so that in the heat the soil will hold on to water and your plants won't get dehydrated and wilt. And yeah, basically those are the most common mistakes people do when planting in containers: inadequate soil composition and inadequate container size for the plants. And also, you have to know that tomatoes are heavy feeders, so you have to fertilize once in 2 weeks. And you can choose whichever fertilizer you prefer. I use organic granular Job's 444 balanced fertilizer, and I also add I use like a tablespoon of that per plant, but in this case, because these are small plants, I would just use two tablespoons per this container. And of course, I don't advise you putting 4 plants in one container. I'm just saying, if you had 2 plants in this container, like 2 micro dwarfs, I would use 2 tablespoons of fertilizer per 2 weeks, and also 1 tablespoon of bone meal, because they need calcium. And bone meal is a good source of calcium. And okay, you can use if you like using chemical fertilizers, you can use that too. I don't use them, but you can just dilute it per manufacturer's instructions and do that once in 2 weeks. And what I also do is I add a layer of, after I apply my my fertilizer, I sprinkle it. You have to work it into the soil, so once you sprinkle it, you gotta a little bit work it into the soil, not just leave it on the surface, because organic fertilizer needs microbes to break it down, so it has to be inside the soil basically for it to work. So I also add, on top of it, I would add like a thin layer of compost. So every 2 weeks I would add a layer of compost on top of fertilizer that you apply, granular or any other you choose, or your choice. And that will provide enough nutrients for the plants to grow and produce. So yeah, you can see this, there is flowers missing, and on this plant here, but you still get some tomatoes. So in this case, I will at least get to taste 3 different varieties from this small container. And Red Robins are actually not bad. They produce not as much as they normally would, but there are tomatoes. There's some getting ripe here. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something, and if you liked my video, give me a thumbs up. Happy gardening and all the best.